There could be some exciting things on the horizon for the Michigan offense. We talked to Ron Bellamy at the Sound Mind, Sound Body College Showcase in Detroit yesterday. Here are some of the highlights and our reactions on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. And we were down there at Wayne State University, where we were supposed to actually talk to Sharon Moore. You did not make the trip to Detroit. Unsurprisingly, because I believe this normally happens. We normally have this camp on Thursday, and to have it on the Sunday of official visit weekend, it's a little tough for those college coaches to get out there. Normally we see a lot of guys, James Franklin, Brett Bielema, last year Jonathan Smith. Didn't see, I think Mel Tucker might have been there at one point, but none of those guys, right? Emissaries were there for a lot of these schools. So we're going to talk about some of the things that Ron Bellamy had to say. Before we do that, I just want to thank all of our everydayers who check in on the show every single day. And thank you for making us your first listen. So we're going to spend the first part talking about what Ron Bellamy had to say about Bryce Underwood. Then we're going to get into, I'm particularly tantalized by this, and I can tell from the traffic on Wolverines Wire, so are a lot of you. Donaven McCulley and Anthony Simpson, the two transfer wide receivers. And then we'll get into Samaj Morgan. Because there's some interesting things there. So we're going to do that. Let's start off with, I think, the money quote for Bellamy on Bryce Underwood. He was asked very specifically, how does Bryce compare to some of the former Michigan quarterbacks who have come through Ann Arbor? And he said this. He said, I have a dog that's sniffing my knees right now. Zuri, go lay down. Lay down. Okay, there we go. I was just starting to laugh because it was ticklish. He said, I don't know. He's unique. He's unique, big kid, strong arm, accurate, super cerebral, super smart kid. I don't know. We've had a lot of great quarterbacks at Michigan. I don't think it's fair to Bryce to say who's comparable to him now because he hasn't taken a snap yet. But there's obviously a lot of great things he's done thus far in the short term. You can see it. You can definitely see it. But like I say, I'm most impressed with his leadership and the way he comes out there ready to go every day. For a young kid, that's pretty impressive. He doesn't get rattled. He's always working. And you love that as a coach because the quarterback usually leads the team and guys follow. You can see that following now with some of the guys, not just in his class, but some of the older guys too, that Bryce has done a good job with. I think in and of itself, that's already an incredible thing, right? Because you've got a guy that if he's a true freshman, and Ron Bellamy is saying some of the older players are starting to follow his example, follow his lead, where he's taking the reins. He doesn't get rattled when things go somewhat awry at any point in time. I mean, those are all really impressive things because you just don't normally hear that from a true freshman. Now, by the time the season starts, as we've talked about, he's not really going to be kind of like the typical true freshman. Now, has he been playing a bunch of other college teams? No, but he's been going up against the Wink Martindale defense, which, I mean, number 10 in the country last year, completely stymied Will Howard and Jalen Milroe and some of these guys. He's been going up against that defense since by the time that he actually hits practice. Say he had out of the 12 bowl practices, say he had 8. And then he had 15 spring ball practices. He'll have 15 spring ball practices. He's at like 38 to 40 practices in. Whereas if you are a typical true freshman, you aren't even getting the full bulk of the fall camp practices due to the bridge program. You arrived in the summer, didn't partake in spring ball. You're getting there and you're having maybe like 8 practices before you even get a chance to, like, before you step out on the field. So that he's already going to be somewhat more grizzled because otherwise, I mean, you're looking at mid-season before a guy gets that many practices under his belt. And he's had a lot of time on task with the ones and things of that nature. So I think that's going to help that much more. And I think that's extremely, extremely exciting. I've got a couple more quotes here from Bellamy on the leadership aspect, which is what I primarily wrote on yesterday. That he's smart, man. The way Bryce attacks football, he's the first one, last one. He's a sponge, always wants to learn, hanging around the receivers, great leader. For a 17-year-old kid, an unbelievable leader. We all know about the physical attributes, but I think he's right on track. Definitely on the right track. He continued and said about how it's going to affect recruiting and everything. And just the idea that he's putting on for his hometown team. He says, you take more pride in it. Local guys see that. You want a guy that's his caliber. You want to follow him. He has a huge following here in the state. I'm sure that's going to help us in the recruiting trip. So I think that those are important things, right? So number one, the fact that he's able to go out there and be a leader already, because what was the knock on some of the previous guys that Michigan has had at quarterback? It's like they just kind of fit in, right? And like, it's not a knock on some of the guys that I still look back on and say, like, man, that guy actually probably should have gotten a lot more credit. You know, like a Shea Patterson. But what was the knock on Shea Patterson? It was like he's not a team captain. He's not really that style of leader. All of that kind of stuff. And yet with Bryce Underwood, you're hearing already that he's coming out there in year one and just, right, like he's not played in a college game outside of the spring game at this point. So, I mean, that in and of itself is an interesting thing to see that he's already out there showing that type of thing on top of the physical attributes, on top of the ball placement, on top of the ability to go through progressions. The fact that he's, as Bellamy said, and he's not the first one to say this, so this isn't just like Ron Bellamy coming out and saying, you know, whatever he wants to say and, you know, whatever. But like, we've heard this kind of across the board. He's the first in, last out type of guy. Bryce Underwood is not, by all reports, you know, from Connor to Sharon to all these people, he's not the type of dude that's out there, you know, getting out into the club, you know, and trying to get, you know, see what he can do outside of the football building. Like, he lives in the football building, and when he isn't in the football building, he's with his longtime girlfriend, right? He's not out there chasing a bunch of carnal things. So for Michigan, that should bode very well, because you generally don't see that from 17-year-olds who get their first glimpse and taste of this type of life. So he's got the head on his shoulders to go along with all of the other things that I think are just going to absolutely make it just phenomenal, as far as the ability for him to go out there and start to play fast. Now, we're going to have to see. It's going to be different when he's in game speed. It's going to be different when he's at game speed against a team that's going to throw different looks at him than what he's accustomed to. So it's not necessarily going to be a shoe-in or a slam dunk, but we'll see how that goes. Okay, so I have a slight problem. I forgot to open a window that I absolutely need here for the show. And we have to, in order to do this right, we are doing it live. And I don't know. I'm trying to use my mouse left-handed from all over the place. I don't think this is going to happen. So we're going to impromptu this. But we are going to continue on. We are going to talk about the other Michigan wide receivers, particularly the two transfers. We are going to get to that here in just a moment. But before we do, listen, there's all kinds of exciting things happening in the sports world. Namely, the NBA Finals are coming up. You've got, if I'm not mistaken, which I very well might be, because I did not pay that close attention, the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Indiana Pacers. That sound about right? I don't know I think the Knicks were eliminated, and I think that I don't even know who the Thunder was playing, to be honest. That's how much I'm into the NBA. The good news is, if you are into the NBA, or if not, you can get involved that much more by going to FanDuel, having some fun, going in with a same game parlay. And the greatest part is you can do a lot of in-game things with player props and different, you know, you can have all your traditional point spread. I took a bet last week on FanDuel. I missed barely because Tyrese Halliburton let me down as a man, as a basketball player and as a man. But the good news is, if you are new to FanDuel, if you sign up now, you can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So head over to FanDuel.com and make every moment with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, let's continue on here, because there's some interesting things that were said about Donaven McCulley and Anthony Simpson. And it should be exciting. I think it must be exciting because it's been the best article out of everything. Like, you know, maybe people have Bryce fatigue. I certainly don't. I'm not going to for a while. So if you try to talk me out of wanting to write about Bryce Underwood, that's probably not happening for 3 years. Along in the next segment, we're going to talk about Semaj, but also some of the things about Chip Lindsey as well. Almost forgot about that. We're going to cover all the bases here. That's what we're going to do. So leadership was a key theme for Ron Bellamy yesterday. Ronnie Bell, I'm so stupid. Sorry, guys. Some interesting stuff on both Donaven McCulley, but more so Anthony Simpson, who I got absolutely clobbered by some of you when we were doing the we did like a depth chart a couple months ago, and I had Anthony Simpson in other than Semaj. Now, I don't think it's going to matter. I think they're going to play relatively equal unless one just ends up being heads and shoulders better than the other. But I got clobbered by some of you. I did. Because I have a lot of faith in what Anthony Simpson brings to the table. But let's start with the known commodity, somewhat, Donaven McCulley, who we know from the 125-yard catch he had in the spring game. But we don't necessarily know in terms of what we can see. He's seen him do on a week-to-week basis in a winged helmet. This is what Ron Bellamy had to say about Donaven McCulley. Yeah, he's had a really good spring. He's getting himself adjusted with everything, the system and his new teammates. He's an older guy, an experienced guy, an unbelievable person. I think his leadership and his presence alone are going to help our room grow. You got some of the guys, Fred and Semaj, older guys now, Peyton O'Leary. Then you've got the young guys, Andrew Marsh, Jamar Browder. Those guys made some big leaps in spring as well. Now, okay, that last part I didn't need to include. But he also spoke just about the benefits of having a 6'5" receiver, right? Then they've got a couple now, right? They're targeting more of those 6 type varieties in the transfer portal and in recruiting, which tells you kind of the direction that is going in. And I think that's kind of getting back to old school Michigan football, right? And that was kind of like the thing is talking around to some people. I think going to something like SMSB ends up being great because you can talk to a bunch of different people, you know, that you don't get to see every day. And talking to Tyrone Wheatley about how happy he is that Soup Campbell's back in the fold, or just in general, I want to give a shout out to Jason Strayhorn, who was great to meet him, and he's already getting the grief from the Spartan fans, but still really good to see Jason Strayhorn and meet him. But I think the thing is that makes it more interesting. What he had to say was he was asked about Anthony Simpson, and here the first word out of his mouth was explosive. He said explosive and moves. Obviously, he's an older guy too. We want to get some experienced guys that have experience playing football. We took 2 older guys in the portal this winter cycle. Now that's not going to break the internet, though. It's like I said, it's doing very well on Wolverines Wire. You can go in and read more over there. But I think it's really interesting just in general. Apparently, Zuri thinks it's interesting because she's about to try to climb up here. I think it's interesting in general, just like Anthony Simpson has like 900 yards almost, or 800 yards, whatever it was on the season. Here comes the puppy. I don't know if this will work with the new mic, but we're apparently going to find out. All right. Zuri joins the show. Here we go. She can't just sit here without attention for 30 minutes. She can't do it, right? Like, she needs all the attention. All right. So, yeah, she's a baby. It's like a 9-year-old baby that just requires all the attention in the world. All right, I don't even know if the mic can pick me up at this point. But Anthony Simpson's the most prolific. Like, I don't know what CJ Charleston's what his stats ended up being ultimately, but like while he was at Youngstown State, obviously he didn't have the greatest year. Now, CJ Charleston is playing a much different type of team in general at Youngstown State. Like, they get a couple of those, those FBS teams that love the love to FBS schools that want to play in week 12 the FCS school, right? You have some of that. But on a week by week basis, Anthony Simpson, now I know he didn't necessarily like go nuts, right? There wasn't like some kind of crazy stat line that you look at for him and say, all right, that ended up being like everything that you want, like that's, let's take a look here. And that was too much for the puppy. I want to look at the game log. We have to do this a little differently still. I know like it wasn't like he went up against some crazy amazing school and just showed out. That didn't happen. But he had 792 yards, 57 catches, averaged 13.89 yards per. And so he averaged just under 5 receptions a game. You look at the game log, he had his biggest games in some of the, again, the types of teams you would expect, right? Eastern Michigan, 4 catches for 101. New Mexico, 5 for 104. Toledo, 7 for 140. UConn, 6 for 107. But he did have 89 yards on 4 catches against Auburn. That's an average of 22 yards per catch. Now, he also ran the football pretty well. 11 carries for 93 yards. That's an average of 8.45. So he is explosive. He has some of that capability. Wouldn't be surprised if I don't know if he's a jet sweep guy or not. I'd have to see, but I wouldn't be surprised if he has that capability, if that is a way that they use him. But he had 3 rushes for 30 yards against New Mexico, 1 for 17 against Arkansas State, 2 for 27 against New Mexico State, and then 1 for 8 against Merrimack. So not against the best teams in the country, right? The best team that he played as a receiver was against Penn State, 3 catches for 2 yards, pretty dang good defense. Probably be a little bit different when he's not like the lead guy though, right? Like Donaven McCulley is going to pick up a lot of that slack, right? But other than that, like he hasn't had anything crazy, but he did have the year before 1 catch against when he was at Arizona. Because remember, he was at Arizona before he went to UMass. He had 1 catch for 51 yards against Utah, who was ranked number 10. And his freshman year, he only had a couple games, but they were all relatively big catches. 1 catch for 10 yards against Colorado, 1 for 8 against Cal, 1 for 15 against Utah. Man, he liked playing against Utah. And 1 for 13 against Arizona State. So 4 catches for 46 yards, still with a 11.5 yard per average there. So pretty good as far as that's concerned. I think that there's a lot of exciting potential for that duo on top of other guys like Semaj Morgan, Frederick Moore, Jamar Browder, Andrew Marsh. Let's not write off Jacob Washington or heck, Amarian Stewart and Shannon Goodwin. I think what's exciting is in some ways, but also scary, there are no known commodities. Really. The closest are the 2 guys we just talked about, Donaven McCulley and Anthony Simpson. All right, let's get into some Samaj Morgan and Chip Lindsey stuff. Let's do that here in just a moment. All right, you heard it here on this podcast when Samaj said this, and you saw it like on video. I'll read part of it to you. I feel like when Coach Lindsey came in, he's seen the type of player I was throughout the spring. It's already night and day because I'm running more routes. You know what I'm saying? That's what I really do. I'm a technician when it comes to routes. So I don't want to be like I don't want to be running bubbles all day and stuff like Coach Campbell had me doing. That's not me. That's not my thing. Coach Lindsey really understands me, has me running routes down the field. I still run bubbles and stuff, but I'm a receiver, a complete player, not just a bubble guy or an end around guy. That's how I feel. I feel like Coach Lindsey, he knew what he was getting with me and can't wait to use me, and I can't wait to play for him. So I asked Ron Bellamy about him, and here's what he said. He said he had a really good spring, and I'm excited to see where the summer goes for him. Obviously camp, but we'll go to camp in August. But Samaj is stronger. He's more explosive. I'm excited for him. And he continued, and I've got these in different places. Oh, and now we're going to something else. Okay, here we go. He continued and said, you guys have seen Samaj. He's an explosive athlete, older, understanding the game. It's slowing down for him. He's just doing a lot of great things. He had a really good spring, and he just keeps chasing the greatness. So that shows that he's more mature, and I think I kind of witnessed that a little bit at the football camp, right? Like I just feel like at his camp, it's just I know he's had this camp since he was a freshman, right, going into his freshman year. But just to see the maturity that he has, I think it's clear that he's as mature. This is not a knock on Samaj. As mature as a wide receiver can be. Am I saying that they're stunted mental growth wise, I'm not saying that, but I am saying that they tend to be the most immature group. Them in the corners, right? Like it takes something to be a wide receiver or cornerback. They're not there's a strong difference between offensive line or linebacker. I don't think anyone's going to argue that. Is that across the board? No. But it does happen that way. So you have that. And I think that if, he does say he has been seeing that explosive work. Because remember, Semaj talked about in spring ball, he's been working with different trainers to increase his explosiveness, right? Like there are some who have just assumed that he is super fast and everything. And he's had his moments of speed, right? The return in the Big Ten championship game when he still got chased down by a guy who was on the ground at the time that Semaj had the ball in his hands. But like he is not like this like 4-3 guy. So to increase his explosiveness is something. Now, explosive is the key word here, because here's what Ron Bellamy had to say about the Chip Lindsey offense. You'll have more explosives, but here's where he continues along the lines of don't start thinking something about this offense that isn't true, right? Like there are people saying like, why are tight ends committing to Michigan? Because clearly it's about to be an obsolete position. That's not really the case. So Bellamy continues, says he's balanced. I think everyone has that mindset. You go and watch the film last year and see that Chip ran the ball with Amari and Hampton, obviously having Drake May a year before, but you follow Chip's career. He's a balanced guy. He's going to take some shots down the field. We're super excited about that. It's a little different brand of football, but we're Michigan. We're still going to run the football. We're going to throw the football. We're going to be balanced. We're going to play complementary ball. It's just a continuation on a theme. That's the thing about bringing in Chip Lindsey. Does it change things in terms of, are they going to attack downfield more? Yes, because Steve Dace has talked about this a lot. Michigan's like average depth was like 5 yards down the field, right? Like they were not attacking downfield at all last year. They did with JJ McCarthy, but I think that number can go up a lot more, especially with a guy that's got the arm that Bryce has, assuming they can get the protection and the receivers. So now you have guys who are more explosive. You have guys who can do more than what they've been tasked with. You've got a smart, heady leader in Bryce Underwood, who's gaining and garnering the respect of players who are much his senior. I think that those are all, this is off-season talk. Yes, right? Like there's going to be a number of you that are going to be like, oh, I believe it when I see it. Like, why are we talking about, like a lot of people always say this about shows here in the summer. Why are we talking about this? Because it's summer. That's why. I mean, but these are things that we'd be talking about if this came out on a Wednesday going into week one too, right? Like these are all promising things that you hope to hear as you prepare for the next season. You don't want to hear, because you can hear the opposite. Michigan has said things that are the opposite, like, oh, we just really want to see this guy grow into that role more, or whatever. Like, not everyone's always doing an unbelievable job. Not everyone has got this leadership. Not everyone's being talked about as being these hard workers, right? Like that, those are things that are said specifically about people. Usually. Now, every now and again, yeah, you get Josh Ross. Again, I'm not impugning Josh Ross. He is a big part of Michigan's turnaround. But every now and again, you get Josh Ross is like Devin Bush, but he's faster. He hits harder. He's more explosive. He can fly. He also is a super engineer who knows how to build a spaceship, and he's going to take us all to space after the game, right? Like you get that type of platitude every now and again. It happens, but those are like, looking back, obviously platitudes, not those very specific compliments that like Bryce is getting. The Semaj stuff is just kind of more mindset, right? Like those are the types of things that you look at and you say, okay, the mindset is there, so it is possible that this could go in a really good direction. And you mix that with what does, we get the same thing. What does Chip Lindsey's offense look like? Well, a lot more downfield throwing. We talk, and let's see if I can do this more with this. We've done this a lot on the show to do the Silicon Valley, and I apologize to the audio listeners, but you want more of this and not this. The Silicon Valley where they talked about like the doors, the way the doors in the car are open. I don't want this. I want this or this. That's what we want our offense to be. All right, that's going to do it for us today. We are going to be back in the next 2 days. We are technically down to the 3 days a week. We'll have at least 4, if not 5 episodes this week. We're going to do on Tuesday, I did a couple thought exercises that are, I think, worth it to get into on Wolverines Wire. I was up until like 4 a.m. on Friday night because my mind was just churning and I couldn't stop working. And I ended up coming up with an all transfer team for Michigan, as in guys who transferred into Michigan, like an all-American team, but for transfers. We did as best as we could to do a first and second team, and also did an outgoing all transfer team, which means that if you are a glutton for punishment and want to think about what could have been, you're going to want to look at that. Both of those are up on Wolverines Wire right now, but we're going to get into depth on it in the next 2 days, Tuesday and Wednesday. Obviously, we will have the mailbag on Thursday, and hopefully we'll also have a Friday show, kind of depending on what we can come up with. So that's going to do it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thank you for making us your first listen. And thank you again to all of our everydayers. We will talk to you again soon. Peace.